Hello, everybody, and welcome to another ICB TV on this very sunny, very warm Thursday afternoon, 22 degrees here in London. Really good to have you back with us. And some of you have been with us virtually every meeting that we've had so far, but very pleased also today to see a few new people coming along. It's always great to have new people, but I also like to think we've got quite a good retained audience. Things here, mad as ever. We're, as you know, all locked away in our homes, but we are still answering phones, answering emails as ICB. The whole team is working busily away there, and I hope you're all happy with the responses you're getting, and you're still seeing us that. Great. So we've got a few things going on at the moment. A number of people now starting to do their own daily webinars. So I always like people to be, I like to think we lead by example. All sorts of different people. Apparently there are a couple of young people on last night, Catherine and William, something or other, talking to children. So, you know, it's nice to think everybody's coming in with our ideas. And just before we start, as we're getting close towards the weekend and it's a sunny day, I just wanted to play you something that we found recently. Actually, our finance director found, and it's sort of doing the rounds. But I think it's funny. So if I'm relying on our people.
I've got no sound.
Got no sound, no. Sophie, have you got sound?
It was playing with the sound. I'll try it again.
Let's try it again. Sorry about this, folks. It is worth the wait, I think. No. Never mind. We'll leave that one.
Sound.
We'll try and get that on later because it is quite funny. I won't break the spell for you. Anyway, so today I've just been joined by Amy Copeland, who's our anchor again for today. But our main guest is Jacquie Mount, who is back with us again. Hi, Jacquie.
Hi, nice to speak to you all again.
And for those of you who haven't already guessed, Jacquie has been working away like an absolute Trojan for the last week since she was last with us, coming up with answers to many questions. But I know that even as she's been doing all of that, even today we've had new releases of information. So it's a question of deciding what's what, isn't it, really, at the moment, Jacquie?
Yes, I mean, we did say right from day one that the information we were giving out was our best interpretation of it, and it's changing day by day. But I'm really pleased that our initial interpretation was pretty accurate, actually. So I'm quite pleased with what we've come up with.
Yeah, it's good. The other thing is that when Claire was on here the other day, she was boasting about the fact that payroll agents have been given this special job feature, and they could therefore send their children to school, and they could go back in and do the job because it was a necessary job. Actually, we haven't had that clarified. It is an interpretation of what has been said. I can understand it. But actually, at the moment, if people can't do their job for home, they are still allowed to go into work. What I think is the bit that's under argument at the moment is whether or not that means you can put your children into school. And I think it's up to the individual heads or teachers to decide whether or not they think you are deserving of your children being sent to school. So I wouldn't take that as read, certainly. And I think if it is going to be classed as a special concern, I think it will probably be for those people who are running large payrolls inside companies. It won't cover bookkeepers who are doing this on a sort of monthly basis for a small number of employees for however many clients they have. So I think we need to be a bit careful on that.
I certainly haven't seen it as such on the list, but I know Claire says it's one of the special occupations, but I hadn't actually read that into it.
Yeah, I think they got that from the CIPP, Chartered Institute of Payroll, and they are now saying that it's their interpretation of it. So I think they might have backtracked a little bit. As I said in it when we were originally told this, I think by Ian Holloway when he came on, that it does say payment professionals. And that was meant to cover people like staff at Barclays or at banks, etc., that had to be there to keep the money flowing. So we will keep you informed if that changes. But anyway, meanwhile, Jackie, so what updates have you got for us now?
Okay, a few updates, as Garry said, coming through already today. As you know, the Chancellor made some announcements this week. One is the change to, or the extension of the C-bills, which is the coronavirus business interruption loans. A lot of press on that over the week. What's come out in the detail in the last few days is that the government have asked the banks to match the rate of interest they're going to charge to the Bank of England rates. As we've all discussed before, they were looking at putting some exorbitant 30% interest rate on after 1 year, and the Chancellor has now asked them to look at that. And the other thing is that there's the zero rate for loan and fees. The government are actually paying that for the first year to the banks. So the banks aren't doing this for nothing for you. The government is actually going to cover the first year of interest and fees, as I read on there. It's no longer to be considered the last resort, the loan. You can go in before you've exhausted all other avenues. The other announcement was that the personal guarantees that we spoke for, if the loan is less than £250,000, then the directors will not be asked to give a personal guarantee. And anything over that, they will only have to guarantee 20% of it, not the whole thing. But they've still got to do that. And they have now, I think, definitely removed the primary residence from the guarantee.
I understand that as far as the figures are concerned, just over 2.9 million people have applied for the loan, and so far about 2,000 have got one. So
it's very,
they are being their usual really difficult people.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I was reading in the paper this morning, and they'd been interviewing a business who'd applied, and he applied in the early days, and after about 3 weeks, nearly 3 weeks, has been turned down. And the reason he was turned down was because he wanted to use the loan to extend his online business, to keep his business going. And they said that is not the purpose of the loan. The loan is to get you through the business employment, not for development. So I think they are looking quite carefully at what you want to use it for. And you have to, if you have a look on the British Business Bank site, they're saying there that you've got to give cash flow forecasts, you've got to explain how you're going to pay back the money, you've got to justify your accounts, and you've still got to prove that you're an ongoing business apart from that, because as we said in week one, they're not going to give these loans out if you were in a bad financial state anyway. There are a few rather large companies that are going that way at the moment, I think. So.
And I think most of the information that I've been seeing is that the banks do want an absolutely watertight set of figures. So again, good news for bookkeepers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're right. And somebody did say in passing, I don't know whether, how widely this is thought, but a good set of bookkeeping figures is probably better than a set of year-end accounts, which is already nearly 12 months out of date. So get in there. Let's make sure that we provide our clients with all of this.
But it is the cash flow as well, not just the accounts. It's the cash flow that shows how you're actually intending to pay this back. So get in there, members. I think that's all I've got on the business interruption loan. The portal, we've had quite a bit of information coming back about the portal for businesses to apply for the following payments. That is now definitely due to open on the 20th of April. I had an email, one of my emails from HMRC today. The portal is now in beta testing, and they're inviting certain PAYE customers to join in and test it out. So it's being tested at the moment, and a confirmation came out on Wednesday that it should go live on the 20th. So you can start to put in your applications for your grants from the 20th. Just be careful, if you all do it on the same day, the system might crash, but I didn't say that, of course. There is an update coming out shortly for the VAT 700/22 notice to confirm the deferral of VAT payments. So it said shortly, so I don't know when that came out in the email this morning. What else have I got?
Something that came up a little bit earlier, Jackie, I'm sure you've seen it. I'm not sure how relevant it is, but the direct earnings attachments. DWP has said that it will not be clawing back any underpayments at the moment. They're going to wait until after COVID. Okay. So that might help some people.
Yeah, yeah. We also had some questions, sorry, going back to the portal, we also had some questions on claiming back statutory sick pay. Now, Amy and I have been talking about this this morning, and we've looked at two of the software companies. Amy's spoken to one of them and I've gone to the other one, and there seemed to have been a bit of confusion in the early days about how you could claim the statutory sick pay back. And we think now it looks as though that's going to have to be done through the portal as part of the normal furloughing that will come back. And of course you will have to possibly make manual adjustments to your payroll figures to claim back the first 3 days of any statutory sick pay, because the software will calculate it from day 4. And it looks like the software companies are not going to frantically work and change their software for what could be a short period of time. So it's some manual adjustments, which is when we were talking to Ian last week, when Ian was on, he was saying the importance of learning how to do the theory of payroll, and this absolutely justifies what we all do, because you have to work out those first 3 days manually. It's a fairly simple process, but you still have to be able to do it manually. So we justify our payroll exams.
Yes, you're looking slightly vindicated there by that style.
I am definitely.
What you've been saying for years, absolutely.
Having been the examiner of that, part of the examining team for that for many years, I'm quite glad I'm not on the examining team anymore. So that sorts out the portal. The other question that's come up, which I found an answer to on the details on HMRC on the coronavirus scheme, we were talking about these grants coming in for furloughing. That is going to be taxable. What will happen is it counts as income and you offset it against what you're paying. So it should be a negative, it should be a zero transaction. So it won't actually be taxable, but of course you won't get tax relief for your payroll that you're paying out anyway. But it is going to be part of the taxable, which of course matches the grant for self-employed people, which is going to be taxable because it's counting as income. So that answers one of the questions that was rolling around certainly last week. The other thing announced yesterday was the grant for charities. The Chancellor announced that yesterday, and he's announced £750 million support for charities. And today, I think the details came out of how that's going to be split. £360 million of that is going to the St John's Ambulance, who is supporting NHS, victim abuse charities, because we all know there's unfortunately a lot of that going on in the news. There's a lot being reported. Charities that deal with vulnerable children, and also the Citizens Advice Bureau is going to get part of that, because they've obviously, their work has increased. £370 million is going to small local charities who are supporting perhaps care homes or something, or other vulnerable people in their own area. And the last £20 million as a minimum is going to be matched funding to any funds that are raised. The BBC apparently have a big night fundraising later on this month, and a part of that charities grant is going towards matching the funding for that with a minimum of £20 million. So that's a bit of detail on the charity.
I bet the Chancellor is enjoying giving away all this money. I don't know whether he'll be quite as prominent when he has to come to us and tell us how we're all going to pay it back.
We were talking about that over lunch today, about where this is all going to come from, but we won't even go there. Sorry, there was, what was I going to say again? Oh, it's gone. Senior manager, it's gone. No, it's gone.
Garry Turner from Xero, you all know Garry if you've been to Summit. He's the man that set up Xero in the UK. Now seems to be spending most of his time doing webinars from in a field at the back of his house somewhere, which is interesting. He said the up and coming phrase of the day is, "You're on mute." And I mention that because apparently my little video that I was trying to get through to you was being played by Sobi, who had left herself on mute. So there we are. So Sobi, I don't know if you are going to be able to play that at some stage.
Yeah, I can. Whenever you're...
But play away, come on. People are dying to see what it actually says.
Okay, hopefully this will work.
Because of coronavirus, you are going to be quarantined, but you have a choice. Do you A, quarantine with your wife and child, or B?
Did it work that time?
It worked that time. Thank you, Sobi.
I'm not sure I shall find that as funny as it is.
Never mind. I'm not sure it was worth it. But anyway, I've been talking to a lot of our members recently, and most of them have had children in the background while I've been talking to them. And one of them had a dog, and unfortunately the dog won, and we had to cancel our talk. Yeah, I think generally speaking, our members are coping really well, admirably well. They're all being very positive. They're all working with their clients. Most people come on and they say, God, I'm working harder than I've ever worked before. And so, yeah, it's tough. We know it is. And it's, you know, there are bad days, I'm sure. But it's good to see that you are continuing with the professionalism that ICB bookkeepers have become known for. You know, this is difficult for you. We know this. And your client will understand that. But at the end of the day, it's the help that you give your clients. We hope we'll help you keep them on board through this and then on afterwards. But anyway. So, Amy, how are we doing on the questions? What are things looking like today?
Oh, hello. Well, so there have been a couple of questions about the zero. Do excuse the noise as always. There's squealing in the background. There've been a couple of questions about the 0 hours and variable hours contracts. Pauline and Hannah have asked, and I did speak to Jacquie about it this morning, and it's quite interesting. So I don't know if you want to cover that, Jacquie, and we will put something to the bottom.
I've spoken to both Ian and Claire since their talks on this, because I was still a little bit confused about how you work this out. And I have to say, hand on heart, I have a slightly different view than the two of them, but they are far better qualified in payroll than I am. So I will bow to their better judgment and go with what they've advised. The latest legislation on how to average hourly hours worked and hourly pay for both flexible contracts and zero-rated contracts is the legislation, as Claire explained, that's come out for holiday pay, which has changed recently. And that states that you have to go back 52 working weeks, not 52 weeks, 52 working weeks, and average over that. So if you extend that to the current situation, what we're being advised is that you look at the average income over the period of time of weeks or months that they've actually worked. So for example, if they've only worked 3 months in the last 6, you average over 3 months. You don't average over 6 months. So, and then you use that as your monthly wage and take 80% of that. But that is then each month or each week. And for me, it seems to possibly pay them more than they would get if they were working every other month or in and out, because they're going to get that every month. However, Claire's view is, and I perfectly understand this, is that the government wants the employers to almost act as a benefits agency and keep these people going, so they don't have to apply for, say, universal credit, and that will get paid back. And the advice is that you keep your justification, you keep your calculations, you have to do that anyway. And if you can justify it, then HMRC, under the circumstances, are probably going to accept it and everything will be fine. I looked at the legislation again, and it definitely states for those that have been employed for more than 12 months, it's the higher of either the individual month. So we're now in April, so you'd look at either what they earned in last April or the average over the last 12 months. Now that works for people who have been working for a year every month but have a variable income. So you either pay the average of the 12 months or the particular month if it's high. So if April was a very busy month, they earned a lot of money, you pay them the last year's April salary. For those on zero contracts where they may be only working odd number of weeks, it does state again that it should be the average over the last payroll year, over the time since they've started, which is why I thought if they started 6 months ago, you'd average it over 6 months. But apparently the understanding is that you average it over the weeks or months that they have actually worked. So some of them may be slightly better off because of it.
Yeah, I think that's good, isn't it? Because if you've got somebody who only works for 6 months of the year, dividing that by 12 halves basically what their earnings were. So,
yeah, but
so
then they would get that every
beneficial.
month. They would get that every month. So at the end of the year, they would earn what they'd earned last year, assuming this goes on for a year, which of course it's not. But it's a temporary 3-month thing, and I think they want them to be able to be self-sufficient and not necessarily having to apply for universal credits or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's good news for them anyway.
I think we've worked out an example. Amy's got. I think we're going to put an example, a calculation up on the website.
Okay.
Got another good one. So Susan Whelan says that she knows of an employer, presumably a client, and who's written to staff and says they'll be furloughed for 3 weeks on 80% pay, and then they'll come back for the remaining week on 80% pay. So they'll be re-employed or sort of back to work, still on the pay cut. And during the 3 weeks of furlough, they must take 1 week of annual leave. And during the furlough, they can work for other people, but only if it's outside of their contracted hours. And Susanna is smelling a rat.
Yeah, I think so. Well, what I would say, first of all, is if they're coming back to work, they should come back to work because they're not furloughed. The 80% is only for furloughed. They're contracted to get a certain income. And if they're working, that's what they should be paid. Because they're doing income generation work, they're supporting the business, they should be paid their full amount. Furloughed and holiday. Now, there's been quite a lot of discussion about this. If you think about it, if you make them take holiday, you're going to have to pay them holiday pay, and you won't get any money back for that. The legalities of making them take the holiday, I don't particularly want to get into at this stage because it's not my area, the HR side and the legal side of that. I'm just looking at the income side. If you make them take a week's holiday, it's going to cost the employer more money. Now, I know it means they've got to hold that holiday over and they're accruing it, but it can be taken over the next 2 years. So it's sort of moving the bulk of it down. But then if you're going to make them take holiday, you can't claim furlough for them. So for me, that seems to be a bit short-sighted.
I think we need to get a bit more clarification on this because, since we've been talking about, other people have been talking about it, we've been contacted by a number of members whose whose clients have said that they're very concerned that if this carries on until end of June has been mentioned, or end of September even has been mentioned, some employees could be entitled to about 4 weeks because we're going through a batch of bank holidays and stuff now. And even trying to fit that over the next 2 years with any reasonable sized number of employees is going to be really tough. Yeah. So you could next year have your employees expecting 7-8 weeks of holiday.
Yeah,
and small businesses aren't ready for that.
Yeah, I can understand that.
I mean, if you are if you're told to stay at home to work, as we are, we're told we have to take holidays as part of that. It carries on, and even though all that happens is we switch the phone off for a week or something, or switch the video off for a week, it is classed as a holiday.
Yeah.
Well, a bit like bank holiday Friday and Monday.
Yeah.
So it's strange that they haven't sorted out something more for furloughed people because surely it's the same. So if you're being furloughed, you get a better holiday than if you're being sent home.
Yeah.
I mean,
I can understand them saying you can take other work, but only outside your contracted hours, because the reason that you're being furloughed is that they have no work for you and you can't work. If the company then says, well, actually, we've got work and we're going back to work and you can work from home, or, you know, you're one of the areas where you can come back in, but we're going to observe the social distancing rules and we're expecting you to come to work. If you're then working for someone else, you're not free to go to work. So you're breaking the terms of your employment contract anyway. So I can understand why they're saying it's got to be outside the contracted hours. So if my contracted hours are, say, 9 till 5:30, and I want to go and stack shelves, I can go and stack shelves from 5:30 till 10 o'clock, but not between 9 and 5:30. That's a personal view, by the way. It's not an official view.
Yeah, because I think one of the other questions was, do you have any control over who they go to work for? Because if you are a particular business that has to be furloughed, can they go and work for your one of your competitors meanwhile? I think that is a legal question, really.
Yeah, I think it is, because officially, as far as furloughing is concerned, they can go, there is no restriction. But most people in an area like that have probably got something in their contract that says if they leave, they can't go to work for them for a period of 6 months or a year anyway. I know that happens in a lot of areas where I know IT design and things like that, so that you don't take the secrets with you. So
I think one of the outcomes of all this will be that far more people will now concentrate very heavily on what it exactly is they've got in their contracts of employment, because I think a lot of people have probably taken one down off the shelf and been a bit shocked when they try to refer back to it.
Yeah.
Amy?
There's loads. People are like posting actual figures a lot, which I think is a bit tricky in the webinar setting. But we'll see if we can get to those. David Bentley wonders about the portal, and says obviously what we've been told is that file-only agents can't use the portal on behalf of clients, but he says he's got standard authorization to act on behalf of a client. What category is that? Do you know, Jacquie?
If you, I was looking at this morning, if you have normal PAYE agents and you can ring HMRC and you can talk to them and you have full agents, then you can apply and do everything else. If you're a file-only agent, you can do certain things, but you don't have full access. That is, I wish I'd taken the link down actually, because I found that this morning. But our agents who would sign up to be full agents for PAYE for their customers, that means they can file online, they can ring HMRC and speak to them online on behalf of their clients, will have access to the portal. It's the file-only payroll bureaus that won't have.
And while we're talking about definitions, I see that HMRC has updated its list number 3, which is of all those professional bodies who you can claim your subscriptions back on against tax, and we are again obviously mentioned. But one thing I need to mention, we've said it so many times before, it's an alphabetical list, but we come under C. We are certified bookkeepers, the Institute of, and we get such a lot of members saying, why are we not on the list? We are, and when we ask them why we're under certified bookkeepers first, they say, well, that's where we want to put you. And that's where we're going to stay by the look of it. So anyway, that's out for another year. So don't forget to claim that back. Sorry to interrupt, Amy.
Every little helps. Every little helps. Hannah Crayfield is just craving even more clarity on holiday accrual for 0 hours workers, saying that it will be a massive burden on the business if they're going to be accruing holiday pay. And it might even affect their decision to furlough them. She says usually the holiday is calculated at 12.07% of multiplier of the hours that they work.
And I did read somewhere that that's changing. I read somewhere that someone had been told that the 12.07% can't be used anymore. But I think that's because it's gone back. It used to be 12 weeks. It's now gone back to 52 working weeks. And I have a feeling, I haven't actually sat down and worked it out recently, but I think that's why the 12.07% doesn't work anymore.
Mm-hmm. So do you think they will be accruing holiday pay?
I was trying to ignore that bit. Holiday pay works as normal, and the reason you're furloughed is because the company has no work for you, but would have work if it was able to continue. and holiday pay will still be furloughed. And the rules are no different for 0 hours. It's just based on the hours that they work, which is going to be an average of last year's average. And it's going to be a very, very complicated calculation, I think. But as I understand it, the legislation on accruing holidays and how it's worked out has not changed. And that's about all I'm prepared to say on that this afternoon.
So Peter, I'm just going through the short questions, by the way. There's a tip.
I'd rather not, I can't deal with any. I've seen one here that have got specific figures. If necessary, we'll go through them all later and we'll come up with some examples and calculations.
I've got a specific figure for you here. It's not one of our members, but it's somebody on Twitter today who's complaining directly to Rishi Sunak to say that she is getting no support at all because she pays herself only £200,000 worth of dividend. Where is the fairness? Well, yeah. It's a shame for some people, isn't it? I'm afraid. Yeah, but you should have seen this one coming, like we all did. But anyway, never mind. Thank you very much.
Peter just heard the news that he basically just wanted clarification on whether PAYE agents can submit the claim.
We think they can.
Yeah,
we think they can. Yeah, we think they can, Peter. You got it. And
whilst you're on reading those
questions, one come up on the chat, Amy.
Can I just reiterate, please, guys, be very careful out there because everything that goes in is going to be audited. As professional bookkeepers, you have to do what is right, not necessarily what the client wants you to do. And we've had a lot of calls on this, repeated calls right since day one. Everybody will try and get the bookkeeper to try and twist the rules a bit, but you can't. Because I can guarantee when it comes to an audit, they'll blame you if you've done it, and so will we, to be honest. You have to do this properly. You're not just a bookkeeper, you're an ICB bookkeeper. Keep that in mind, please. Amy, sorry, something caught your attention then, have you?
No, I was just looking at the one on the chat about the footballers. Sorry, I'm sure we'll come to that.
Well, yeah, I mean, do you know the answer there? So Claire Simpson Martin has asked on Facebook, because we do stream these live on Facebook, about sports players, because in their contracts they're going to be paid per played game. But obviously now there's no games. So the unions shut them down, and they do have things like employers' rights, certain employers' rights such as holiday pay in their contract. So,
well, the thing is, they're like a 0 hours contract, I suppose. They have a contract which says they'll get paid when they work. And yeah, football is considered to be work for some people. So therefore, I think they could be. I think this is a personal thing. I don't want to get into this, but I think in the world of sport, particularly football, I think at the lower levels there is probably a very good justification for furloughing them, because they will at least get some income, and at the lower levels of football, the income is not as great as at the higher levels. It's interesting to see what they're doing at the very top with their players and.
I think there are a number of people who've got a lot of money that have been coming out and trying to do things. I mentioned the other day about the Mercedes team that are converting their whole workforce to making out ventilators, and Ron Dennis is creating meals for the hospitals, etc. I noticed that Denise Coates, who is the lady at the head of Bet365, who is the UK's largest earner, I think, has given away 10 million to the NHS. I mean, she's earned 320 million last year, but I suppose 10 million it's still worth having. So we need to remember that, which is good.
I think there's some goodies and some baddies going to come out of this at the end, I think, as ever.
Right. Yeah, I think so. Amy?
Thinking this is still an unanswered question. So somebody's asked if you can claim back the employment allowance and the employer's NI on the furlough amounts as well.
Well, I haven't actually seen anything about it, but if you're getting the employer's allowance and you're not paying NIC anyway on the first £4,000, I don't think you can't claim it back. because you're not actually paying it because you're getting a rebate for it anyway. That's as I understand it. If somebody disagrees, then please come back.
I think that makes sense to me. And we weren't quite sure about furloughed staff and bank holidays.
No, that again, I saw that on one of the Twitter feeds this morning. The rules have changed. The wording of the holiday changed a while ago. It used to be 20 days plus bank holidays. It is now 28 days, including bank holidays. And it's very interesting to note that where I am now, our district council collects our bins on bank holiday Mondays. So for them, it's a normal working day. Yeah, but our bins get, well, not at the moment, but normally our bins will get collected on bank holidays. It doesn't change, and they take their 56 days or whatever, 5.6 weeks, sorry, 28 days, as and when they want to, and they may get extra allowance for working on bank holidays, I don't know, but I think if you still have a contract that says your holidays are 20 days plus bank holidays, then the bank holidays will be included. You're not working, you'd have to take the bank holidays as holiday because that's written into your contract. If your contract says 28 days including bank holidays, then you can choose to pay them for them to take it as holiday or not. Again, it's a lot of this is coming back to the contract of employment. And as Garry said, I think once this is all over, a lot of companies are going to be looking at their contracts of employment very, very carefully because there's a lot of things that are either missing or things that have gone in there which perhaps aren't the best wording.
Yeah, it's. I think there are a lot of things going to change. I mean, a lot of people are still saying they think that once we come out of this, everybody will change, the whole working pattern will be different. I think there will be minor changes, but as I said, I think earlier this week or the end of last week, if past disasters like wars, etc., are anything to go by, there will be significant changes, but actually life will go on more or less as it was before with a few tweaks, you know, I mean, we'll have to see. But I know a lot of people are going to be asking if they can work from home in the future.
Well, I think working from home doesn't suit everybody. I mean, I've worked from home now for quite some time, and on and off I've worked from home on and off over the past 20 years, and it actually suits me. But you do lose an awful lot by being at home all the time in communication and meeting with people, and that's a big part of your working life, I think, actually being in an environment where you're meeting people, speaking. So I don't think, you know, it might be that some people will want to work at home 1 or 2 days a week, but certainly not full time. You have to be very self-disciplined to work at home full time.
Yeah, well, you're lucky. You've got one of these offices down the garden.
I have now, yeah. That's why I bought the house. I fell in love. I didn't buy it for the house. I bought it for the office. It's the reason we bought it. But not in the winter because it's freezing.
Yeah, yeah. My problem is that where I'm sitting at the moment, it's very close to the kitchen, where all the food is. You know, I'm putting on weight terribly. I've got to stop anyway. Amy?
That's why, sorry, Amy, I was going to say that's why all the Keep Fit videos are on the television every day to stop you, keep you fit going.
Yeah, the problem is that I don't like the idea of June watching this, whatever his name is, this thin, skinny thing with all the muscles.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
And she doesn't like me watching Chloe Madeley. So, you know, I mean, we've reached a bit of a hiatus there. No, not really. Of course not. It's not the reason that's stopping you. Don't worry.
I think you've got to be careful not to do too much because it's, I mean,
I'm very careful.
You're going to hate me for saying this. My own daughter's decided to use this to keep fit. She's working at home. She's absolutely exhausted and in more pain than she's ever been in before.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm not doing PE with Joe every morning.
No.
But we are still doing it as a family. We have nowhere near enough space to do it all together, but we make it work.
And you're still aching?
Yeah, I kind of stopped for a week, basically, and now started again. Yeah, my muscles.
Yoga's
good. So Paula Vesey-Smith just has chirped up to say she totally agrees with you on employer allowance, and she's also assuming that when you do start paying employers NI, then you can take the allowance.
Yes, once you're over the limit for your allowance, I think once you start to pay it, if it's COVID-19 based, you'll be able to claim it back. Yeah, I agree, Paula. Thank you.
Yeah. But somebody has said if you're only furloughing one member of your team, and are eligible for the employment allowance, surely you'll still get it.
You'll still get it because normal payroll operates as anyway. So if you're working and you're claiming the allowance, you'll claim it anyway. So yeah, so if you've got one on furlough and one on working, the only I think what will happen is you'll still use your employer's allowance up in the same time because you've got NI on furloughed and non-furloughed, and therefore once you get to the limit, but I know the rules have changed since the 6th of April, and I have to say I haven't looked at the limits on the £4,000, but I don't think it will affect small companies particularly. Paula might come back on that. She probably knows more about that one than I do.
So in terms of making these lovely calculations, Janet has asked, and I think we might have covered this before, but can you use a different calculation month by month?
Yes, you can change.
Yeah,
you can change between the average and the highest month, and you can choose which is most favourable. So I think, as I said earlier, and this backs up what I think Ian said last week, that if you have a very high month, which is going to bring your average up, in the month where you're way above average, you pay what you paid last April. But if in next month, if last May's salary dropped, then go for the average if that's better, and you can change it month to month.
That would be very conscientious, wouldn't it? I suppose that is the right thing to do, is it?
Yeah, I think so. But as long as you can prove it, as we've said, they are going to verify all this at the end, and so at some stage there's going to be a grand reconciliation, and I think a few companies are going to possibly might have to start paying some things back if they don't play the game properly. I had a call this morning from a member. Again, we've said this before, Gary. Be very careful. Be careful what your clients ask you to do, because we decided that what her client wanted her to do for herself as the sole director, as a director, was definitely not allowable, and she is going to go back and say, no, I cannot do this. And I gave her some reasons why she wanted to go back to the client. The client's being quite insistent. So again, our members are still getting pressure to try to twist the system.
Yeah, and a couple of other things have been mentioned quite regularly recently. Why did the government come up with a 28th of February? Well, that's because once they announced the giveaways, they wanted to make sure that everybody didn't suddenly put their uncles, aunties and daughters and sons onto the payroll.
Absolutely.
But the other thing is, those people that have suddenly remembered that they're self-employed, but they forgot to put in their annual tax return this year, and who have been given until I think the 20-something of this month to complete that.
23rd, I think it is.
Yeah. HMRC has put an announcement out today to say that they will be risk rated. So if they believe that anybody's on the fiddle, they might come and, well, when time allows it, I think they'll probably be popping around to see you rather than allowing you to take money at the moment.
Yeah.
So, I noticed they've waited until several million have put in a claim, but there are always going to be people out there who are trying to bang the system. So
it would be interesting to know how many have clients, or how many of our own members have already been contacted by HMRC to look at applying for the grant. I don't know whether they've started that yet, or whether it's coming out at the end of this month.
It's a good question. If anybody's online and can answer that for us, let us know. And if anybody is there from Hampshire, please tell us whether your grants are coming through yet.
I'm sure we'll get some responses on that. So Jason Alderson says, if all workers started mid-month, how do you calculate the 80%? He's asked, is it on just the full months?
Yes, pro-rata to the full month. So whatever you paid them in February, whatever you would normally pay them, then that's what you pro-rata it up. However, if there is zero contract worker, I think you've got to take February's money and use that and not pro-rata it up. Oh, I suppose if they started mid-month, you pro-rata it up.
Pro-rata it up. I mean, again, if you just document and justify,
keep notes on every single calculation that you do, so that Claire's view, when I spoke to her after her webinar the other day, was that if you can keep notes and you can justify why you've done it, and it's within the what's the word I'm thinking of? Sort of the rough allowance that they're doing, then she's pretty certain that HMRC will honour it. It's only for those who perhaps falsified that they had actually started before the 28th of February. And then it was found that they hadn't, and they're claiming that will have to probably be paid back. But I think if you're keeping to the spirit of what's been offered, then Claire's opinion is that it will be honoured as long as it's fair and you have evidence.
Yeah. Good.
There is a little question here about commission, because some commission is allowed, isn't it? So
Yes.
It's Faye again. Hello. I'm presuming it's the same Faye.
Is this Faye from South Wales?
I think
No?
it could be. It doesn't. The accent doesn't come across. But so basically, the employee wants to average the commission over the year, taking his P60 figure, but the employer doesn't want to do it that way.
I think if it's contracted commission,
Yeah.
then it can be included if it's in the contract.
Okay.
Because it's part of their, it's always considered part of their salary.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, the employee wants the average because some months are very high. So yeah, let us know if we've answered that question and if you are indeed Faye from South.
Oh, someone's got a grant in Hampshire. Just come up, I've seen.
Oh, good. Hampshire was the only county that seemed to be missing out on this, so that's good. They've been a bit slow there, but okay.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for letting us know, Paul. Faye is indeed Faye from South Wales. But apparently, Faye says there is no contract. It's just verbal.
Oh, a verbal contract.
Not worth the paper it's written on, they say.
On the other hand, if you don't have a written contract of employment and both employer and employee work to an agreed for, I can't remember how long it is it a minimum of 3 months, then that can be taken as an implied contract.
Yeah, I think all joking aside, if you've got a letter employing somebody and you haven't quite got round to the contract, however many years that might have taken you, yeah, you can't start changing the rules.
No.
They will look back and say, well, this person was assumed to have been employed. We came across this ourselves at the Institute some years ago. And they said, yeah, but you knew what the intention was. You worked for that person for this period. So you've got to you've got to understand that that's what it's all about.
I think as an example, I would think if you are working as a sales rep and you are earning commission on the sales you make every month, then that should be included. But if you're not working as a sales rep, but you happen to know somebody who you think might become a customer and you put them forward and you get a one-off commission payment, then I don't think that would be included because it's not part of your regular job. So if it's a commission just as a one-off because you've happened to have done something outside your job to earn it, then I don't think that's, as I understand it, that might be what they mean by a commission that's not allowed because it's not part of your regular work to do that.
Now, there was a question that came up with this the other day, and that is, as we all know, a lot of catering establishments do allow a certain amount of cash to go direct to the waiters, etc. But some of them have a strict system whereby they all get a share. Now, as I understood it from this, if that is part of their contract, they will now get part of that as lumped into their salary for the calculation.
Yeah, because if it goes through salary on a regular basis or a trunk system, where a trunk system is somewhere where somebody in the organisation takes charge and pays out the tips and it goes through a separate PAYE system, that's on the PAYE and it's part of their regular income, and I think that's probably included. It's obviously the cash tips that are not, because what should happen with cash tips, as we all know, is that they should declare those on their own self-assessment returns, and yet they won't be able to get the grant for self-assessment because it probably wouldn't be declared as being at least 50% of their income.
So if it comes under the cash or receipt gov, that's not included anymore then?
Don't think so.
Barry Pete wonders if you know anything about commission for estate agents. And if that's contracted commission, I suppose.
I think, again, if it's contracted commission, it probably should be included.
Yeah.
So, great news. Katerina says that one of her clients in Retford has received £10,000 from Bassett Law District Council. I must admit, I had to Google Bassett Law. The Bassett Law District is in North Nottinghamshire, which probably everyone knows. For me, I don't know.
Good. Yeah, well, that's the grant. That's great.
So Helen has mentioned that Nest are allowing pension contributions to be made later, so up to 150 days late. Did we talk about any sort of pensions? I know there is some information going out in the newsletter later today about the pensions, what to do, there's, what to look out for.
No, I think the only information I've seen is that the pension rules for duties for employers are still in place. There's been something out, I got something from the pensions regulator this morning, which is just a confirmation of everything that's come out recently. But I think if the pension company are allowing a deferral, then that's fine, because that's for them to do as long as it's paid, I suppose. Because we did say that it wasn't the employer's money, so they should pass it on because it's their employees' money.
Didn't the government say, though, that they would cover the basic?
Yeah, they're covering the basic. Well, they're covering the basic employee. Yeah, they're covering the basic employer's contribution. So therefore, that should be passed on. But if Nest is saying they will allow 150 days deferral, I suppose there's nothing to stop them doing that. I don't know.
Okay.
Probably worth checking with the pensions provider, I guess. But we will be giving some more information. But I think they have relaxed the tellings off, basically. And I was going to say that yes, Melba Morgan Freeman is not having so much luck with the local grants. I've asked her where she's based, but she says also she hasn't been contacted yet about claiming under self-employment. When do we imagine HMRC will be?
I would think about the middle to the end of this month, because it's going to be paid in June. So I think the applications, I would imagine that once they've got the portal for furloughing open, that I know is going to be their next priority. So I would think possibly towards the end of this month.
So meanwhile, you can claim benefit, yes?
Yes.
That's right, exactly.
Interestingly enough, at some stage we were talking about universal credits earlier, and any advanced emergency payments will have to be paid back or will be deducted from the universal credit lump sum when it comes. And I think universal credits will operate as normal, because you're going to have to use those as when you look at your overall income for the year, which of course is going to include the self-employment grant. Universal credits may or may not have to be paid back if they've been overclaimed or overpaid. And I think that's the same as it is normally.
That'll probably be the same, though. I mean, that will be the same, obviously, if you are on support and then you suddenly become self-employed. You'll have to work it out over a year anyway, won't you? Yeah. Oh, okay, that's something. I noticed that, and again, some more, bless you, some more figures that actually.
Sorry, you don't want to stick me sneezing on the screen.
All right. Somebody was saying from the benefits DWP that in a normal period, when they have around 55,000 applications for benefits, they've had just in excess of 1 million applications. I mean, how they're coping with all this, I don't know, but hopefully they are. Hopefully they are.
And are they thinking of closing down all their massive buildings now, with all of their staff set to want to work from home forever? Anyway, so Jo Wheeler, about self-employment. This seems a bit unfortunate. She asks, if someone was employed until February 2019 and then became self-employed, will they miss out on the self-employment grant? She asks, but I think it's a she, will they miss out because of it'll be less than 50% of their income? I mean, presumably they've also, you have to have been self-employed.
Yeah, you have to have been self-employed in the 1920 tax year. You have to be continuing self-employment currently, and your self-employment income had to be at least 50% of your total income. So, yeah, I think it's, if you fall, the Chancellor did say when he announced all of this that probably he reckoned 5% of self-employed people would not benefit at all from this, even if you exclude the ones at the top end. So the rules are there, the dates are there, it's very specific, and there is no wriggle room on that.
No. Oh, it's getting hot down here. I'm sorry, I've taken the jacket off at last. So anyway, here I am. I'm in shirt sleeve order now. But, so the questions seem to be still coming in thick and fast, Amy. And just to reiterate, once we've finished our transmission very shortly, any questions that are outstanding will be answered later, and they'll be put up on the hub as and when we've got completed. Yeah.
Absolutely. So yes, there is a newsletter going out at some point as soon as I get off this chat, and I can proofread it all. And we'll send out the newsletter, and there is going to be this is quite exciting. There is a furlough letter to employees template that you can download and give to your clients. So we've had that approved, and we're happy with it. So we're happy for you to dish it out, just to make it clear. And they have, the guidance states that you have to keep these things on file now for 3 years at least, that communication that people send out to their employees. And there will be an FAQs list. We are going to add to that because there are all these tricky questions you keep asking for which there isn't specific guidance yet. So we will be adding to that all the time. But that is a job retention scheme, sort of further details and FAQs page. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So I was
you take after your father rather than give an answer which is a yes or a no. I'm told, you're going through a long explanation, but I think it's far better. It's all right. It's fine.
So it's just
is it funny here? I don't know what other people are seeing on their screen, but I've got Garry on the left-hand side of my screen over Amy, and he's definitely looking down and frowning at her.
Not intentionally. It's a bit like University Challenge there. No, certainly not.
Yes. That's all right.
So,
completely off the point.
So somebody just said, who was it? So Sandra says the self-employed, she thought the self-employed would be contacted in June. But yes, critically, you're right. You don't need to contact HMRC.
No, I think it'll be before that because the grants are coming out at the end of June. So I think it's going to have to be before that. It's the grant that's paid at the end of June.
Yeah, and then just to remind everybody that it's 23rd of April is the deadline by which people can send in a late self-assessment tax return for the 18-19 year. So if you've got those self-employed stragglers, get them in. Paula VC Smith agrees that one word is, quite often too few, if 10 will do.
Well done, Paula. Yes, you and I are both from the same school, aren't we? I know. Yeah.
And Zoe Rhymes from Facebook says Richmondshire District Council in North Yorkshire has started paying grants. So that's exciting. And in Northumberland, Jason Alderson says all of his clients have received theirs. So that's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Well done, Jason.
Good.
That's pretty cool. So, where are we? Another quick nice one. Claire says that Polly at ICB head office, which obviously is at Polly's kitchen table at the moment, was incredibly helpful and friendly when she asked about a duplicate textbook order that she'd made. So thank you, Polly. Be safe and well. So that's nice to hear. And Polly is exceptionally helpful and friendly, isn't she? As hopefully most of us are at ICB on a good day.
I hope so.
Oh dear. So Kevin Jarvis says on Facebook that he knows of a self-employed person that had to close their business purely as a result of COVID-19. They don't intend to restart the business, but are they eligible for the grant? I would say it's probably worth.
Who's going to say it's only their word that they're not intending to continue? They've closed the business temporarily due to COVID-19. So providing that they fulfill the requirements, yes, I think they are eligible for the grant because they've had to close because of COVID. And
I think a lot of people, when this started, threw the towel in immediately, and they've now very quickly taken the towel back because I think they've realised that there was a bit more coming to them than they could have. And I think, the shock and the knee-jerk reaction caused a lot of problems. And I think people are starting to reevaluate what's going on. And if our members are, professional in what they do, they keep in touch with those clients. I think early decisions were made in the heat of the moment and the shock of it all happening. So I think a lot of people will. I mean, they're going to have to do something when they come out of this.
I'm just wondering. This particular individual has taken a job, so he's obviously being paid.
Yeah.
We don't yet know until we apply for the self-employment grant what the questions are going to be. So if you definitely have no intention to start up again, I'm wondering if we're going to be asked to state that, to say, yes, I fully intend to continue to trade after this. And if you say, no, I have no intention to trade because I'm now fully employed, I wonder if you'll get the grant. It will be worthwhile applying for it, but be prepared not to falsify the answer to the questions. But then you could still keep your business open and still work.
I was just going to say that Kevin Jarvis has added that actually this self-employed person now has a job.
Yeah, I saw that. I think if they are now working and they are not going to open up again and fully intend to carry on working, then I think it would be wrong to apply for the grant. I think it might be considered to be a little unethical to apply for the grant. Because they are in a fortunate position of working. And don't forget the grant is taxable. So if you're working now and you get the grant, you're going to have to pay tax on it anyway. But it's still only 20% of...
As far as being self-employed is concerned, the only real termination of self-employment is presumably when you fill in your last self-assessment tax return.
And you state that you've closed down.
Yeah, so that'll be January.
Yeah, so at the moment, the fact that he has chosen not to trade doesn't mean that legally or for tax purposes that the business has closed, because it's still open with HMRC.
Yeah.
You say, Gary, I think a lot of people have jumped quite quickly and perhaps are rethinking.
On that note, Steph Busby was an employee on the payroll in February, left in March, and has come back in April to ask to be re-employed. As the position fell through because of COVID, what date should she be restarted on?
I would think from the day she left when she stopped being paid. I think she would take the backdate. You can backdate it to the 1st of March.
Fab, so backdated.
So if she was still on her leave period, she might not actually have left the company yet, technically, I suppose. Yeah. She was on 4 weeks leave, and the company, I'm not sure I'd want to take an employee back who already told me to go away, but it depends how nicely she said go away, I suppose. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Actually, the thing is, I think about that again, because the idea of them being taken back is a job retention scheme, which means they will continue after the furlough with the same employee, with the same employer. And I think a lot of these people that are being taken back because they've been furloughed from the new job and weren't able to apply for the furlough grant for the new job, I think that's going to open up a bit of...
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think...
at the end of it. I think you've got to be so careful. The query I had this morning from a member was an employee actually resigned and left the company on the 25th of February and now wants to go back and be taken back on again. And that's the one that we've agreed that we don't think it's right, because they'd actually left and got their P45 dated the 25th of February. And I think there's any way around that one at all.
Yeah.
I think it's dependent on the date they leave.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is that we keep saying this, there is going to be one huge audit at the end of this to make sure that people ask for their money correctly. But it's interesting that although social media does have its gathering of idiots who occasionally are anti-everything that moves, how strongly behind the government most of the people in this country are. And I noticed one comment the other day saying, no, you're not fiddling the government, you're fiddling us, the people of Britain. And I think everybody's going to want people brought to task if they have been on a fiddle. I think there'll be a lot of calls to the dobbing in line, as I call it.
I mean, I'd go back and further on that. I'm sorry to keep belabouring the point, but it's the reason for this being furloughed. The people who are going back into their previous employment, this is aimed not at those who have left and gone for another job and then lost it through there. It's aimed at those people who were laid off before the furloughing was announced. Because when a lot of businesses started to lose money, they had to lay staff off. Then when the Chancellor announced the furlough, he said, you can go back and be retaken on and be furloughed because you were laid off too soon. And this is to support you. But for those who actually left voluntarily anyway and went to another job, I think they're either going to be covered by the new job if they were there for the 28th of April, or I think they're going to fall between the cracks because they weren't laid off because of COVID-19. And I think a lot of people are looking at this and thinking, well, this applies to every situation, but it's only situations that have risen because of COVID-19.
It's a good point, actually, but I think also on a general point, we ought perhaps to go back to the beginning of the information and think about it again, because I know it's only 3 weeks away or 4 weeks away or something or other, but the bit that you've just mentioned, I'd sort of forgotten. It's gone into the back of my mind somewhere, and you are absolutely right. The purpose, the purpose of the grant.
Yeah, it's the purpose of the whole scheme, and it's within the spirit of the whole scheme as well. And I think those that operate outside the spirit will possibly have to pay it back later.
Right.
Okay. Sort of on a similar note, Lee Scott says that he has a client that was self-employed as a sole trader up until the 31st of March and was due to be moved under a pre-arranged set up a limited company, which was due to the IR35 rules. Do you think they would be eligible to claim for the self-employment grant scheme? I mean, again, the problem is this person's not going to get paid otherwise.
No, this could be one where they fall down because that's a difficult one.
I mean, I suppose if it's got anything to do with the changes to the IR35 rules that are now being deferred.
Well, again, it depends whether who their client is, because the IR35 changes were only for medium and large companies taking on subcontractors. If you're a small or a micro company, if your client is a small or micro company, nothing is going to change. That has always been the way anyway, that you're responsible for a business who contracts themselves to a small or a micro business is the person who's responsible for the tax and the NI. I don't know the answer to that one. We'll try and find out for you.
I think the old IR35, there is always a lot of misinformation about, and I know that we stopped a couple of speakers at branch meetings who were going in basically to say that every single bookkeeper has got to be employed by every single client, and give me £500 a month and I'll sort it all out for you. Yeah, thank you very much. Go away. So there's always people either trying to make money out of it or trying to stir it up for press coverage or something like that. But yeah, IR35, it has been moved back, but I think perhaps some people were persuaded to jump unnecessarily because they just read too much into it or were being fed too much misinformation.
I mean, on a personal note, when I was practicing, I operated as a limited company and I had to become employed from a client because I hit IR35 rules, because I was there 3 days a week using their equipment, and basically I should have been employed. So I had to become employed to avoid doing the IR35. Otherwise, I would have had to have stayed as a subcontractor, but declared all my income from that client as PA, and paid PAY and employer/insurance on it. So I chose to become employed instead of going down the IR35 route. But it is, I think in the article that I wrote last month or the month before, I think members have to look at every single client if they are self-employed or limited companies, because off-payroll working rules cover self-employed. It's only IR35 section of that covers limited companies. Off-payroll working rules still apply to the self-employed. And if you're self-employed and you work for a client in their premises for 3 or 4 days a week, you use their equipment and you can't send anyone in to do the job for you, then you should be employed.
Yeah.
But that's outside what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's one of the things that we do need to cover, you know, in something like this, fire or something like that, which is a bit more off what we're all concerned about at the moment. But these questions are important because although everybody is concerned about COVID at the moment, everything else still is going on in the background, and everybody that we've had on has stated right from day one, you've got to stick to the employment law, you've got to stick to regulations, etc., etc.
I will see if I can get an answer for the IR35 question. I don't think we're going to get it before next week because obviously all my contacts at HMRC will be off for the weekend unless they're really busy still trying to write the portal.
So, I mean, Lee Scott has just said that the client insisted that they convert to a limited company. I'm just wondering, so if you're self-employed and you've got multiple clients, which is the reason why you'd be able to keep being self-employed, even if you're employed by one of those old clients, you could presumably still claim, you know, if some of your self-employed income has been affected.
There are a lot of companies that are still doing this, and it's a difficult one, this one, because they are insisting that you become a limited company under IR35, so you declare pay all your own tax and NI, so that they don't have to. So basically, it depends on the size of the company. If the company that he's working for is medium or large, then yes, they will have to employ them. But if they're not, they will have to treat the limited company as if the limited company were employed. That's basically the way it works. That sounded as clear as mud. Sorry about that.
Quite a few people have come back and just said it does specifically state that you only get the self-employment income scheme grant if you intend to keep trading in 2021.
Interestingly enough, you can. Oh no, perhaps I shouldn't say this. I'm just
Sorry, we're not listening.
I was just wondering about having your own company and remaining self-employed as well.
But that's what I'm wondering.
I know it means 2 practice licenses, but
of course, ultimately. That's
I
guess
that certainly.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be. This is a whole minefield. To be honest, I think this whole concept of this IR35, I think we need to take it away and discuss it and find a proper answer rather than speculating this afternoon. I think it's safer if we go away and try and get some official guidance on this, and we will get back to you as soon as we can.
So Naomi has a question, and I think I know the answer to it, but I probably am wrong. So Naomi wonders if you're claiming the self-employment income scheme grant, and then you go out of business completely. If the work just dries up in July, say, then what happens? Although we don't really know what's going to be happening in July anyway.
Well, it depends whether the business dries up and disappears, I suppose, really. I mean, the fact that it has clients at the moment, it just goes into hibernation, perhaps.
Ultimately, you can keep claiming the grant, right? You can keep 80%.
Yes, I mean, unless your business is actually put into liquidation by somebody else, your business remains open. I mean, it may very well be that there are debts that can't be covered and somebody puts you into, takes you into administration for not paying bills or something. I don't know who would do that at the moment because of the cost of going through the courts and the legal side to do that. But all I can say is that the grant is taxable. It's your income to cover the next 3 months while you're not working. If you then close the business down afterwards,
you're still going to have the tax available.
You're still going to have to pay it because it's your income. So you're going to have to pay tax on it. So I don't think you'll have to pay the grant back because you'll pay tax on it. So I would, why would you close your business down? Well, she's probably saying after this is all over, if she can't build the business up again. I think, to be honest, I think if you're trying to show that you're back operating and you're trying to make sales or you're trying to get clients, and keep the evidence that you are trying to keep your business going, but for whatever reason you couldn't, and therefore you can no longer trade, then I think that's within the spirit of this. And hopefully, it's a taxable grant. It's not a loan, it's a grant.
Yeah, I think that's okay. How are we doing on questions, Emmy? Because it's now 4:15. And,
gosh, doesn't time fly when you have
basically a holiday, isn't it? And I've got to get this newsletter sent. I was just going to say, Jill asks, if an employee is furloughed because they need shielding, can the employer use a subcontractor if needed to carry out their employee's work?
sorry. Say that again, Emmy. Sorry.
Furloughed someone because they're shielding.
Yes.
So they can't come to work or do work. Could you then use a subcontractor to do that employee's work?
So why not?
I suppose, does it only count because if you're shielding, you could still work, couldn't you?
The thing is, yes, if you're shielding, it's whether you could do the work from home. If you can't do the work from home and you cannot go into the office or premises because you're shielding, then you can be furloughed. And I don't think there's any reason why on a temporary basis, as long as the agreement says while the period of the furlough is going on, no, I don't see why. You've got to have the work done. And you've then got, the thing is, you've got to pay the subcontractor anyway. So the fact that you're paying somebody else, it's not, you've still got to pay somebody to do the work. So
that seems to make sense to me.
I think, does that make sense, Garry?
Well, it does to me. I mean, I think so. I mean, logically, you would think that, because surely that's like having 5 staff. Somebody has to be furloughed. The other 4 have got to do 5 people's work. You know, that's to the beast, isn't it? So the fact that you don't have anybody else, you get a freelancer in order to protect the business. I mean, and in order to protect the business is a key phrase in all of this. I think, you know, that's what we're all about.
I also think it's important to remember that you can't furlough someone who could work from home. Working, shielding doesn't stop you working. It only stops you working outside the house. You can still work.
Or specific information about that one, but yeah, I think that you can't furlough somebody because you're going to get rid of them at the end of this anyway, and both sides know that. That would obviously be a figure. Somebody that is perhaps answering phones then is kept out shielding. Well, they can do that from home.
Yeah.
I think it's the individual position that really has got to go into this. I mean, can you hold your hand on your heart and say you think this is a legitimate thing? You know, I think that's the.
I think again, it's justification and keeping records as to why you've taken the decision. And in the spirit of it, it should go through. I think this is what Claire was saying the other day, that a lot of it is to do with the spirit of the whole thing and keeping records and keeping all your evidence.
Interesting little ditty here from the CEO of the HMRC. But be warned, any business knowingly trying to defraud, in inverted commas, the coronavirus furlough arrangements, they could be pursued through the courts.
Ooh.
That's just come out, apparently. So I think they're starting to believe that there might be 1 or 2 people trying to twist the rules a bit.
Never.
Well, Nicola Payne does ask the question whether she should encourage her clients to take as much as is on offer, because she says that she's got one client who's a partnership, and they've had 2 lots of business rates grants because they've got 2 rateable properties, and she says obviously she's in Wales. Amber has something to say, and this is, you can just show your face quickly. We're like feral in this family at the moment. I'm sorry, I'm just working right now, but I do love the sound. Okay, great. She says in Wales they can apply for the Economic Resilience Grant, which is another £10,000, and then also the self-assessment grants, which I presume is, because they're self-employed, aren't they, technically?
Now, we spoke about this last time I was on. Isn't the business rate the standard rate for England only, and the Economic Resilience Grant for Wales?
Yes,
slightly different name, but same thing, isn't it?
I think it's the same thing. I don't think you get both. I think you get either. So if they've got
they are in Wales and they're getting them.
Are they?
What are you saying that they can't get in Wales?
Well, I think it was Sean came up last time I was on and said that the business rate support grant is only for England, and that Wales brought out their own grant. It was the last time I was on. And I was corrected when I said it was there to fill in the gaps. Apparently, it's, as I understand it, it's the grant for Wales. So
I think they have to have all.
I may be wrong.
I think Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland all have the business rates grants.
Yeah, but they have their own.
Spain.
Sorry, Garry?
Perhaps you could ask Faye.
Oh yes, no, well Janet,
Yeah.
Janet has already stepped in and said it is extra, and says Nicola Payne, it's additional to the rates grant and the rate-free
Which
period.
is how I read it the other day. Okay.
You know, basically,
If you can tick all the boxes,
you can.
Yeah.
sorry, if you can tick all the boxes and answer all the questions properly, then I don't think that's a problem.
No, I don't think so. As long as you're not falsifying anything.
Yeah.
I mean, if there is a box that you have to tick that says I have not applied for another grant, and you tick it, then that's wrong. But if you cannot, you see, I read that resilience grant in Wales as a grant to pick up bits that fell through the English grants, the grant system that had already been announced, and I was corrected online and I accepted the correction, but maybe I was right.
And somebody else kind of on a similar note, Angela has just said, if a business has reserves and money, should they use that instead of the job retention scheme?
No, I don't think they do.
No, it's not said that.
No.
Interestingly enough, the nearest parallel I've got to this is the announcement on the charities, because to get the grant for the charities, what they're saying is that charities should look very carefully at whether they can use their reserves first. They cannot use reserved funds unless the charity equivalent of the Mem and Arts, can't remember what it is for charities, says that it can be used by a majority of the trustees agree. So you can't use reserved funds, but they are asking you to look, charities to look as to see whether they could use their reserves. But I haven't seen anything for limited companies that says you have to use your reserves first.
Don't think so. No. Amy, have we got any more burning questions?
There
Or
are a couple of open questions that we could probably just deal with quickly. Janet says if she's got staff, if there's staff who are on call weekends and do call outs, can that be included in the calculation for historical?
I think it's in their contract. If it's part of their normal salary, then I see no reason why it shouldn't be.
And there's a question of whether factories are not included in the council grant scheme. Seems they're not covered, but it seems very unfair. I would agree. I don't know anything about that. Personally.
I'd have to look into that one. There is a list as to who can and can't apply. I know car parks can't apply.
Yeah.
I'm not sure offices can either, can they?
I mean, it's just there's certain.
If you're in a serviced office where rates are part of your overall fee,
you can't. No, you can't claim them.
Although the company can, yeah.
I don't know about factories. We'll try. I'll look that one up.
And Joyce thinks that you can only apply for a grant for one property, no matter how many you have. That also strikes me as unfair, but obviously it kind of contradicts what Nicola was saying. I don't know about that. Maybe it's different in Wales.
Ooh, I don't know about that.
All of the business rates and all that kind of stuff, that's all deferred, isn't it? So that's, it's more difficult to get the answers on these things.
But if you've got several cafes or something or other in a town, you must claim it for all of them, not just the first, surely. So,
but it is, an assumption. It is a business grant. It's not a premises grant, is it?
That's a point. Yeah, actually.
It's a business grant. It's a grant for the business.
Right.
I'm sure someone will come back with an actual example at some stage.
I can imagine people sitting around the cabinet table having a similar discussion some months back, thinking, no, it's definitely for a business. So.
This is great. So Nicola Payne says that in Wales, a company can claim for up to 2 properties. So not all of them.
Oh, we've got another one.
Wow.
It's very warm. It's hot out there, isn't it? And then Nicola Payne suggests also that the rateable value is probably the issue, and most factories are over the rateable value.
51,000. It's 51,000, isn't it? That's probably why.
The small business rates relief.
The level of rates, then.
Unless, of course, you're in hospitality or retail, and then you get a different kind of grant, don't you?
I forgot to mention at the opening that this was the Welsh issue, but hello everybody, Cymraeg, etc.
So
Sorry, recovery.
So LA Not the place. The person says that apparently they've asked three times now over previous webinars. It's because you're using all these numbers. Okay, so this looks like a good question. Let's answer it now. Sorry, LA, for the delay. And one of our clients pays staff on the 10th of the month following the month worked for the first to last day of the previous month. Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So January pay was based on the 1st to the 31st of January, but it was paid on February the 10th. February earnings were paid on March the 10th. So when working out last year's average, should I use 12 months based on the earnings dates or as paid dates? It's a very good question.
Between the payment date and the paid date, isn't it? Ian covered this, and I'm trying to think what he said. I think it depends on the...
How about just pick
when
one?
it's calculated,
what you earn and not when you're paid for this one, I think. So I think you ought to base it on when the earnings were earned, not when they were paid.
It's, I think he said, if I remember right, and I was listening, yeah, when you calculate the period, it doesn't matter when you're finally paid it. It's that period that pay is covering,
I think it's because you're on the payroll and that's the money you earned in that month. So that's the average you take, not when it was paid, because some people pay a week in arrears, some people would pay at the end of the month. So I think it's got to be based on the month they earned the money, not the date they were paid.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm happy with that. I hope you are, LA. Sorry for the delay again. In Scotland, you can only claim one grant, regardless of how many properties you have. And Philippa on the chat has just said the grant is only to businesses who get the small business relief. Yeah. So multiple properties, it's not the properties, as you say, it is indeed the business.
Right.
So there you go. And LA says, thank you, finally. You can go into your bank holiday weekend feeling satisfied, hopefully. So I think that about rounds it up, really. There's a couple of sort of calculation questions from...
I'll look at the calculation.
We'll look at those later,
try and go back to him. If we can pick up who they are, I'll try and go back to them individually by email.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Amy. I think we'll draw it to a close now. And we will, as I've said already, if anybody would like to send in questions off air, as it were, we will answer those as quickly as we can. Sorry, LA, we'll have to route through. I haven't seen anything from LA before, I think. But anyway, so you've got glad we've finally got you the answer on that. Jacquie, thank you very much again for coming along. Yeah. It's always great to have you on. And next week, start off on Tuesday, because we're not broadcasting tomorrow or Good Friday or on Bank Holiday Monday, obviously, because it's a religious holiday for many of you. So we'll be back on Tuesday, and we will then have two of our members on, Steve Worrell and Lucy Brown, and they're going to talk to you about how they're coping with all of this and any fantastic ideas they've got for getting you through everything. And just before we close for the weekend, really, if I can just get you all to think very carefully what you do this weekend, and please stay inside as much as you can. Please don't think that because of the sun we can all mix with each other. And it's the government is saying this often enough. It's really not my place to say it, but I'm saying it because we really feel that as ICB we are a family. Jacquie will agree with me on this. You know, we're a bit closer to our members than perhaps the average membership body. We're not just any membership body, we're the ICB membership body, and we feel very close to all of you. Many of you we've met at various functions, and we know you well. And we know that some of you are having problems with the bug itself, with coronavirus. And, you know, we need to protect ourselves. We want to make sure that you all keep well. And I know, talking to lots of the members over the last couple of weeks, people like Richard Romero, for example. You know, Richard is a good friend to ICB, and he has been, unfortunately, he's been cancelled from his last chemo because he couldn't get into the hospital, etc. And we have all our fingers crossed for him and everybody else. The only reason we like to lose any of our members is because they retire at the end of a long and very happy career as a bookkeeper, and we really don't want to lose any of you because of the coronavirus. So stay safe, look after everybody, enjoy this time at home with your family, And if you are living by yourselves, you've got nobody to talk to, give us a call. We'll have a chat with you by all means, or get online. But have a very safe, happy weekend. And we really, really do look forward to seeing as many of you as we can on Tuesday. Happy Easter, everybody.
Happy Easter. Keep safe. Bye.